Hello, I'm Tim Beggins, president of Elk Trading Company. In this, the natural gas weekly recap, natural gas prices are down. This is now the July contract for the spot, currently trading right now at 348.90, down 3.3 cents or 0.91%. As you can see, we are heading here toward the lower end of the Bollinger Bands at 342.10, and that is going to be our major support. Looking back, we had that tweezer bottom here from the 19th and 20th. That is an area of support, as you can tell right here. That low was right there at 343.60 and 344.40. So that's a value area for traders. And so we'll look to see if we hold in this particular area here on some short covering ahead of the weekend. Let's take a look at the hourly chart. As you can see, it is holding above pivot support here. First pivot support at 344.70. Again, it's in front of that value area you saw with the tweezer bottom pattern. And we're looking to see if we can carry above the daily pivot today, which is 351.20, and then above that first resistance at 358.60. Let's take a look at the front to back spreads. With the front of the board weakening, the front to back spreads continue to widen. And this one, the Jan versus July contract, is widening toward our first objective here, which is at $1.40. Currently, right now, trading at 131.40, up just about a penny. And so we'll look to see if this continues this pattern. And let's take a look at the Jan versus October spread. And here we've got what we call a Fibonacci trend extension. And we take our low further back to our most recent high and down to our most recent low. And this gives us an objective to the upside. In this case, it's 134 for the Jan versus October spread, which is currently trading at 116.40. This also coincides with last year's peak around the 134.10 level. So this is important to see if we can continue to widen this Jan versus October spread. So what's going on? Where's the pressure on the board? Well, the 8 to 14-day temperature outlook is below normal for parts of Texas, Oklahoma, into Kansas. And so this really isn't helpful. The summer heat hasn't arrived yet. But what might be a little bit bullish? Well, right now it is the wind. The wind in Texas is low, and it's going to be low for the next few days, which means that the total renewables will not meet all of the demand in ERCOT, which unfortunately is still dampened by rain. We'll look at that in a second. But as you can see here, the wind at its peak today, right now, during the peak hours around this afternoon, will be only around 3251 megawatts, quite low, since we have almost 40,000 megawatts of capacity in the system. The system is expected to peak out in ERCOT today around 66,000 megawatts. Let's take a look at the wind chart. And this is highlighting here Lubbock. This is because the wind farms are typically centered out in the Panhandle and West Texas. And as you can see here in the bottom graph, the wind is quite low, really between 2 and 5 knots per hour, which means that this is really quite low to generate those wind turbine powers. And this will continue all the way through until Monday night. And what's causing some of the dampness? Well, it's more rain in Texas, that's for sure. And here's a picture of the satellite this morning. And we've got rain almost again from Mexico all the way back up to Houston and encompassing parts of Dallas, Fort Worth, into Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi and Alabama. So this means the Southwest or Southeast, excuse me, is just not really helping on the demand side because of the rain. And because we are turning to June soon, this is the start of the Atlantic hurricane season, June 1st. And as you can see, the models are trying to push something in the Gulf of America in the second week of June. But right now, let's take a look. And the tropics are fairly quiet. What is helpful? Well, plenty of rain here around Panama, which means those lake levels are very, very high. That's especially important for LNG as they need lots of water for those locks. And that means that the water surcharge, is very, very low for this time of year. The Lake Catan levels are at basically November water levels, which are typically very low this time of year, but now much higher. And the drought. And the drought continues from San Antonio all the way back to California and parts now of Florida. This isn't going to be helpful once the summer heat does start to come in. And let's take a look at the Baker Hughes rig count. So off to the spreadsheet we go. This was last Friday's, and as you can see, the rig count dropped 10 for the United States, and that means that 2 rigs were dropped for gas, 8 rigs were dropped for oil, and this also is mirrored in Canada with 7 rigs down for the week. That was last week. Today's rig count will come out at noon Eastern time, so a little bit past our report today, but this is a trend we're going to keep an eye on because this is very important for associated gas. And that means production may start to peak out here in the next few weeks and start to tail off just as summer heat comes in. And as you can see, the variances are in the areas that were most important right here. As you can see, 3 down on the Permian region, lower for the week, Eagle Ford down 4, Marcellus even down 1, and really just more of the same across the United States. So weaker prices are now starting to reflect in, of course, the rig count. So let's turn to our stocks. These are our stocks that are, again, in the oil and gas E&P sector, have a market cap between $2 and $10 billion, and have a high short float. So once the prices start to move to the upside, these stocks will have rocket fuel to go. And of course, now we've included Civitas Resources, CIVI. As you can see, unfortunately, though, for the week, these prices are down, except, you guessed it, Apache. APA, excuse me, up 1.14% for the week. Things are starting to turn a little higher right now. Murphy and CNX and Civitas all in positive territory, but Comstock, Magnolia, and Northern Oil and Gas are still down on the week. So again, let's recap where we are for natural gas. This is the July contract as spot now. We are currently trading at 350 and 4 ticks, down 1.8 cents or 0.51%. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon.